How Donald Trump is barreling towards these authoritarian tactics and quite blatant promises to push America as far away from democracy or into a dictatorship as he can if he wins next year. Critics, meanwhile, are going at the kind of MAGA allies who not only are enabling this, but really arguing that anyone trying to hold Donald Trump accountable or protect the rule of law and democracy are themselves enemies of the state. It's all part of the same plotting. Now, Trump said in this kind of odd exchange with Fox's Sean Hannity, who actually seemed to be pushing against the idea that he would be a dictator, that would be a bad thing. Trump said, well, he'd be a dictator only on day one, which builds on his claims, promises, and vows to have retribution against his perceived opponents in the United States. Now, Liz Cheney has been on a book tour. She has been on several news programs, including on MSNBC, other channels, and right here on The Beat. She brings a very important perspective to this because, as many people remember, she was in leadership. She had a front row seat to this. She also took a stand, pushing for Donald Trump's impeachment over the insurrection, then chairing the Jan 6 committee. And here's what she told us.
Donald Trump won't deny that he has plans like the ones we've been discussing. What the lesson of Donald Trump of the last several years has taught us is we have to take him seriously and we have to take him literally. And he has shown us what he's willing to do.
He has shown us take him literally and be ready to resist the type of strategy of diminishment, sometimes appeasement, sometimes just a general kind of trolling, undermining of these very real concerns, because that itself is designed to help Donald Trump not only return to power, anyone can run for office, but return to power and perhaps not leave office. The guardrails are clearly eroding on the right. Take a sitting Republican senator echoing Donald Trump's discussion of abusing power, potentially illegally, to get the DOJ to go after opponents, which is something many associate with troubled ex-democracies. And, as is so often the case, this is someone who can't be taken as consistent or really very honest because he came to prominence before running for office as a Trump critic. But now Republican Senator J.D. Vance says the feds should investigate a journalist, this one happens to be from the Washington Post, who wrote that the second-term Trump plans could amount to a dictatorship. The request coincides with reports that Trump is considering a whole range of firebrands for VP, possibly Tucker Carlson, possibly J.D. Vance. Now, it's very early for all this, but Axios reports that the commitment to stretch legal and governance boundaries is part of what Trump is looking for and finds appealing in certain individuals, including Vance, and to be a hammer for him. Now, Vance, like Kevin McCarthy, has been on both sides of this. And that's another important piece, because we're not talking about traditional good faith debates here. For example, we've covered abortion. It is a long-running debate in American life, and there are people who, whether you agree with them or not, have spent their entire adult lives or careers with one position on the issue, which means at a minimum they seem consistent, not like they're just making it up. This is the opposite. The same way McCarthy criticized Trump and then went to Mar-a-Lago, the same way J.D. Vance wrote a whole book bemoaning exactly the type of Trump MAGAism taking over the right, and now is not only in it and not only defending it, but pushing farther than, quite frankly, many other Republicans. Liz Cheney also speaking to this point and how so much of this is not honest, is not, in her view, good faith, but is actually done for very craven personal reasons or just sheer political gain.
Kevin McCarthy is, throughout this period, he had multiple opportunities to do the right thing, and each time he did the wrong thing. And it isn't just that it has now cost him his career, but it's that it cost the nation greatly that the leader of the Republicans in the House didn't lead. He needed Donald Trump's donors, and that meant he had to help Donald Trump wipe away the stain of what he's done to our country.
That was such an important point that she was conveying there, and it's one that is relatively new. In other words, 6 months ago, you couldn't have exactly said whether Kevin McCarthy's political calculus, whatever you think of his ethics, his undermining democracy, his honesty, but the political calculus might have still worked. And according to Cheney and those fighting for democracy, that would have been worse if it worked, because there would have been a reward for him backing up Trump. But you watch the news, so you actually know, and Liz Cheney and I discussed this. I was really curious about her breakdown on this. It's actually the opposite. McCarthy being loyal to Donald Trump over his own public criticism of the coup and the coup attempts and the insurrection that McCarthy had offered, it resulted in the shortest speakership we've seen in history, in his public humiliation and defenestration. In other words, both things can be true. It could be good for democracy to stand up for what's right. That's kind of that baseline, and it's a nonpartisan point. But also it could be good politics to just do that instead of selling out as McCarthy did and still getting ousted, still having a failed speakership, still getting shown the door long before any of the other colleagues of his in the Congress. Now, then there's Sean Hannity, who I mentioned. And he is someone who we know privately was horrified by aspects of the insurrection. Again, that's not a high bar. You would expect and hope that people who live in a rule of law society would look at the violence that day and the attack on democracy and have some opposition to it. Well, he did privately, but then he lied about it in public. And then privately, he tried to urge aides and people he had influence over to rein Trump in. Privately, and then under oath, he had to admit not for a second did he believe those election lies from Trump. And yet Hannity is doing the same dance now. The closest you'll get to his old concern is when he tries to help Trump by pushing back a little bit or trying to get Trump to say, well, he doesn't want to be dictator. But we've shown you that headline-making clip. Hannity was basically saying, well, you could say right now, you're not going to be dictator, right? And then Trump wouldn't even say that. He says, oh, only a part-time dictator, as if that is encouraging. The Washington Post writes that you take it all together, and Sean Hannity demonstrates how to help an authoritarian gain power. The Post, of course, an independent outlet. This is a breakdown looking at the facts and the evidence. I'm talking to you here on a news channel that you could say competes with Fox, and you got to get your sources' information wherever you want it. But believe me when I tell you we're looking at this at the level of the substance, democracy, and the rule of law, not just trying to take a random shot at Mr. Hannity, who happens to be on another channel. It is striking when you see a news media that at times underestimated Trump the first time in 2015 and 16, now saying this is as serious as a heart attack, and this is the intersection between the media propaganda, the political project, and then the other nefarious forces that might actually decide they think that they're better off ending democracy in America. And it's hard to say it without people thinking that it sounds extreme. Well, it is extreme, but the extreme part is not how we say it or report it. The extreme part is their extreme plan. We're talking about someone running for office who wants to take away your vote, who continues to lie about the last election, who is promising to go after the independent and free parts of American civic life, the free press, the opposition, which to him includes top Republicans like Liz Cheney, who had this to say about Mr. Hannity.
Sean knew at the time, they understood how dangerous Donald Trump was after January 6th. Sean Hannity knows that today. So he has several times now tried to sort of bail Donald Trump out when he's said something or suggested something that is illegal, that is completely beyond the bounds.
We are now joined on this important discussion by former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, no relation to the aforementioned Senator Vance. And Joyce, we thought of you here for this discussion, both big picture, and you have been very closely tracking and writing about and giving a legal analysis on the Jack Smith project, which is the most direct federal response to the last coup. Before we get to the law, if you will, I'm curious, just as someone who's also served in government, taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, your response to some of what Ms. Cheney says, some of which is not new, but much of which comes from a very conservative, card-carrying member, lifetime member of the Republican Party.
So I think Liz Cheney is expressing the views of so many people who are surprised to find themselves in agreement with members of the other political party. Democrats and Republicans who've come together and agreed that we live in a moment where country has to matter more than party. And so it's, in that sense, it's not as surprising when you think about the fact that Liz Cheney is now urging people to vote for a Democrat in the next presidential election. It's not that she agrees with Joe Biden's politics or wants any of the policies that would come with the Democratic administration. She and so many others, including I think you and me in this category, believe that protecting the Union, preserving our constitutional republic is the paramount duty we have as we look ahead to the 2024 election.
You put that very clearly. I asked her, people have gotten to ask her different questions, so we're not by any means unique here. She's a much sought-after figure after everything, including chairing the committee. But one of the things I asked her in sort of plain English, Joyce, and something you and I have talked about, which is people have different roles, they're positioned different ways. Not everyone's going to run a prosecution office as you did professionally. Not everyone's going to be in Congress. So I was asking and curious, what about citizens? What about people who have some time in the day or some time beyond voting? What did she recommend? Here's what she said.
Regular citizens in this country can never be bystanders. And right now, you've got to consider running for office yourselves, put your name on the ballot if you're going to uphold the Constitution, vote for good people, but most of all, come together across party lines to stop Donald Trump.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, coming together across party lines to stop Donald Trump sounds like the defensive maneuver that we're going to have, that we're going to all have to work on in 2024. I look forward, Ari, to years ahead where we can go back to having arguments about policy and politics, the sort of respectful, well-meaning arguments that are designed to get at what the best country for the best policy for our country would be. But we aren't living in that moment right now. And I think Liz Cheney is absolutely right. People have to run. They have to inform themselves. They have to encourage people in their circle to get out and vote.